So, what is biogeology?
It's a paradigm-shattering revelation, and everything that we know about geology and the layers of strata and the timeline of when things happened, all of that has to be revisited and revamped because it's based on erroneous thinking.
This is an open source investigation. We need people to participate by comparing more results and conclusions, because it's always good to question what you've been told, especially now. Thanks to all the people sharing on the internet and social media, we can see far too many correlations to just keep dismissing them as coincidences.
My theory is that when you find iron ore, and especially when it's attached to limestone, that what we're looking at is the red blood that is rich in hemoglobin, which contains iron. As opposed to the venous blood, which is the purple blood, which doesn't have the same quantity of iron in it. And so you can see, the underside of that. This has a very fleshy look to it.
Wow.
Take a look at this trabecular bone and compare that to this. This is rock that's found on the top of the mountain.
This is a real good example of the Swiss cheese trabecular bone. You see multiple channels, and here there's both iron ore and the reddish earth that's coming out. Now some people might think that the earth has been packed in there because of flooding, but I've shown in other videos that there are larger rocks, which we'll look at one in a moment, that chunks of the rocks have broken off, exposing channels inside the rock with the reddish earth oozing out of the channel.
Yeah.
So that kind of debunks that explanation. But this has been fractured or broken, and so has this. But on the other side, you see these micro blood vessels. So as the tissue has been broken, then the iron ore accumulates. And if you look down in here, you can see all of these smooth, curved passages, and there's channels, and those channels become smaller channels. You can see the remains of the reddish earth that's all the way up here. The iron ore is caked throughout the channels. Okay, but if we look over here, we've got a block that's about 3 foot. And then you have this massive hole here filled with, guess what, reddish earth, right?
Isn't that strange? And you'd expect that red earth would be at the bottom. If it was from, rainfall, then it would go to the lowest point. But the point that it's packed up to the top suggests that it was in there before the weathering.
And again, here you see these little lines that are like micro blood vessels, which you would find in bone. In cortical bone, you're going to have a thick, compact bone with occasional channels going through it, and that's what you're seeing. And then here, if you look down, you can see there's a big channel here. And then the thing about blood vessels is they're fractal in nature, like trees, right? You have a trunk, and then you have a smaller branch, and a smaller branch, and a smaller branch. And so that's what you're seeing, is this
big one
opens
going
up,
into smaller,
and then it goes into smaller and smaller ones. So explain that to me through erosion.
Yeah. And how come these ones are going down, and this one's going horizontal? You'd expect them to follow a bit more of a suit, a bit more of a pattern.
So you will find stones that are kind of a combination of the two. I call them transition stones. So you've got the trabecular bone that's becoming cortical bone, that in between. So you'll find one side has thick, non-vascular stone, and then the other side has the Swiss cheese.
Here we can see the blood flowing through bones in all directions, thoroughly down the centre, and blatantly much less in the dense outer layer.
These stones, I believe, are all chunks of titans. And if you get up on them and you look down, you see that there's loads of different kinds of histology, the tissues. And you can see some that have the iron ore that's caked onto the side with little openings like that one over there.
So what is it you just noticed?
I noticed that this rock looks like a lung.
Yeah.
Like the structure out of a lung, and you see
Spongy.
here. Like that's like the blood vessels that go into the lung.
Oh my goodness.
I guess it's just another coincidence, no?
Who knows? There's mountains of evidence to support alternative theories that conflict with many of the explanations that we believe to be true, which causes us to ignore, suppress, and sometimes even censor the new information, instead of just verifying it by applying the scientific method.
The primary tool of a forensic scientist is the microscope, and when you're dealing with something the size of a mountain, you are the microscope.
We're saving the biggest and best evidence for last, but hopefully we've already convinced you to go and take another look at your landscape. In the next episode, we will share our external and internal observations of the Montgo Mountain in Javier, Spain, which happens to have 50 correlations with the anatomy of an elephant. Now, that's a lot of coincidences. Any final thoughts, Mike?
Another thing about karst, or more specifically limestone, is that the official explanation in mainstream geology about how limestone forms is that it's actually comprised of mollusks, coral, shellfish, and skeleton, and that has all been compressed under the sea floor for hundreds of millions of years, creating limestone, and then that limestone is pushed upward through tectonic activity and then eroded by water and wind and rain.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting that even according to mainstream geology, this is officially made of bone.
Ah.